"You're not my daughter anymore." Evelyn's venomous text seethed, erasing me from her family as I wed, unaware I'd soon hold the key to her unraveling legacy. "Hi, I'm Nora." I mailed my wedding invitations with hope and got silence from my own mother. On the day I said I do, she posted picnic photos with my brother and called it family. She didn't just skip my wedding, she deleted me from the family story. 8 months later, she knocked on my door with a suitcase. But her betrayal cut deeper than I ever imagined. Before we begin, where are you watching from? And have you ever been cut out of your own family? Drop it in the comments, because this story, it's not just mine, it might be yours too. I didn't panic, not at first. When I mailed out the invitations for our wedding, handwritten envelopes, silver foil edges, each one sealed with care, I didn't expect fanfare, but I expected acknowledgement, especially from my mother. I double-checked the tracker twice a week, hoping for a ping, a reply, anything. I saw her name light up under viewed. She'd opened the invite, then silence. "She's ignoring me again," I whispered, my heart sinking with dread. I told myself she was busy. I told myself she'd reply eventually. I even told myself maybe she was planning a surprise. But deep down, I knew better. You learn the truth when you stop giving people excuses. What I didn't know then was that the silence was louder than any scream I'd heard as a child. 3 months before that, I realized I was no longer part of the family group chat, not removed with drama, just quietly disappeared, like someone had turned the volume all the way down on my existence and hoped I'd forget what sound was like. "They've erased me," I told Julian, my voice trembling with hurt. It stung more than I let on. But I wasn't new to being quietly erased. Growing up, my mother made it no secret who her son rose and set on. My older brother, Felix, could have been caught robbing a gas station and she'd praise his initiative. I, on the other hand, could earn a double degree and hear, "That's nice, honey. Did you see the article Felix wrote for the company newsletter?" When he dropped out of college to build a startup, she threw a party to celebrate his risk-taking spirit. When that startup collapsed and he moved back in, she cooked him a roast and told everyone he just needs a place to refocus. Me? I moved out at 22, paid every cent of rent on time, never asked for a penny, and was still, somehow, the irresponsible one. Once, during a family brunch, I'd gotten a promotion, my first management title. I'd brought it up, cautiously proud. My mother sipped her mimosa and said, "Let Felix have this one thing, sweetie. Let him have this one thing." "You're always second," she implied, her words a sting I couldn't shake. Like I'd been stealing his spotlight by simply existing. By the time I met Julian, I had stopped expecting anything from my family other than superficial smiles at Christmas and tight-lipped birthday texts. He noticed that early on. Asked me once, "Why do you always go quiet when I mention your mom?" "She doesn't see me," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. I didn't have a neat answer. We planned a small wedding, nothing fancy, just a beautiful garden near Forest Park, some live acoustic music, and a short guest list. Julian's parents were thrilled. His sister helped me with the dress. His dad offered to drive my aunt in from Salem. My mother, no returned calls. No text back when I sent the save the date, no reaction to the bridal shower invite. When I finally sent the formal RSVP link, she read it, left it there like a cigarette butt, still burning. Julian was the one who showed me the back end of the RSVP system. She viewed it, Nora, a week ago. "She's chosen Felix over you," he said, his voice heavy with anger. I remember staring at the screen, numb. That was the night we crossed her name off the seating chart. Not because she said no, but because she said nothing. The morning of the wedding, the sun came up soft and golden. Julian's family buzzed around the venue, fluffing tablecloths, stringing lights. laughing over memories they were building in real time. I stood in my dress, cream lace, nothing flashy, and stared at the front row. There was one empty seat meant for her. Guests thought maybe she was running late, but I knew. I'd known before I zipped up my dress. I'd known since that RSVP went unread, since my calls went unanswered, since I realized the last message in the group chat with my name in it was over 18 months old. Still, I smiled for the photo. I laughed during the vows. I danced like nothing was missing, but the bouquet toss felt like tossing hope into a void. And when I cut the cake, this perfect chocolate-tiered masterpiece with sugared lilies, I noticed no one had touched the slice meant for her. Later that night, I boxed up that slice, put it in the fridge next to leftover Prosecco and Julian's aunt's artichoke dip. I didn't cry. 3 days after the wedding, my cousin Maura texted me out of the blue, "Hey, not sure if you were meant to see this." Attached was a screenshot, a message from my mother in the new family group chat. "Felix's engagement party will be our real celebration." "They're replacing you," Maura added, her text a painful confirmation. My fingers went cold holding the phone, not because I was surprised, but because it confirmed what I'd always suspected. I hadn't just been forgotten, I'd been replaced. Julian came into the room and asked if I wanted to take a walk. I told him I was fine, but even I didn't believe it when I said it. That night, I lay in bed, phone face down beside me, and stared at the ceiling. It wasn't rage I felt. It was that slow, suffocating ache of being erased without noise. I didn't know how long I'd been staring at the ceiling. Maybe an hour, maybe longer. I reached for my phone, not to check messages because I knew better by now, but to scroll, numb and automatic. Instagram opened itself, like muscle memory. I tapped through stories, and then I saw it. A picnic. A perfect, curated picnic spread out on a red and white checkered blanket beneath the same bright sky I got married under. Plates of sandwiches, sliced pineapple, a charcuterie board with honeycomb and Gouda. My mother holding a sparkling cider in a stemless glass. Felix in a button-down like he was auditioning for a lifestyle ad. Lila, his girlfriend, no fiancé now, flashing a diamond the size of a raindrop, the caption under the post, celebrating the ones who matter most. "You erased me on my wedding day," I whispered, the betrayal searing my heart. I didn't cry. I just stared at the image burned into my mind. My family smiling, plates full as I stood in a white dress hours away, slicing cake and pretending the empty chair in the front row wasn't a message. I got up, made coffee on autopilot. Julian was still sleeping. I didn't wake him. I wanted to sit with the silence. I'd gotten good at it over the years. As a kid, I used to measure my worth in fridge magnets. My mom had this laminated progress board for Felix and me. His column was always full. Honor roll stars, spelling bee ribbons, even a photo of him holding a plastic trophy from a community soccer league. Mine, a participation ribbon from the science fair. A faded perfect attendance badge. One time, I got second place in a poetry contest. And she said, "That's sweet, honey, but Felix just got MVP last weekend." "You're never enough," her words echoed, a childhood wound reopened. Then she added his laminated photo to the board before mine even had time to stick. When I got my first A in physics, she called it lucky. When Felix dropped a course, she said he was strategically managing his load. Everything I did felt like a warm-up act for his main event. Later that afternoon, Julian woke up, poured coffee and studied my face. I didn't say anything, but he knew. "They didn't forget Nora," he said softly. "They just chose not to show up. They're punishing you for shining," he added, his voice thick with anger. I nodded, the weight of it settling over my shoulders like a wet coat. There wasn't any anger in me right then, just hollow recognition. I sat on the couch, scrolling again, numb. That's when my phone buzzed with a message from my cousin Mara, the same one who had sent me the group chat screenshot after the wedding. New screenshot, new sting. My mother had written, "Julian seems nice, but this isn't how it's supposed to happen. Felix should go first. You're a placeholder." Mara texted, her words a dagger in my chest. Not, "We're happy for them." Not, "Wish we could have been there." Just a quiet correction of the family narrative, one that had no room for me to lead in anything. I stared at the words, feeling something inside me shrink. My wedding, the vows, the empty chair, the silence. It hadn't been a miscommunication. It had been a decision, a line drawn. I closed the messages and opened my photo drafts. I'd saved a post I'd been planning, a carousel of wedding shots, Julian's hand in mine, the bouquet in the air, the smiling guests, the cake. I stared at the post button. Then I swiped left, hit delete. Next, I opened my RSVP spreadsheet, the one I had painstakingly built. Every name, every address, every status. I highlighted the whole thing. Deleted it too. There wasn't anger. Not yet. Just stillness. That same stillness I'd felt in every Thanksgiving prayer, where Felix's name was said first. In every voicemail from my mom that started with, "I don't know if you're busy, but..." Felix wanted me to ask. I wandered back into the kitchen. There was still a napkin on the table from the wedding. A single folded one I must have pulled from the box and left there. Without thinking, I picked it up and started folding it again, corner to corner, then into a triangle again and again. A small quiet motion that filled the space where noise should have been. Julian came back in, paused when he saw me. He didn't say, "Are you okay?" or "You should talk to someone." He just sat down across from me and said, "You're allowed to feel it. You just don't have to stay in it. You're stronger than their silence," he added, his voice a steady anchor. I looked at him. Really looked. And for the first time in days I believed someone meant what they said. Still, I didn't stop folding, because the truth was I did stay in it. The truth didn't hit me all at once. It dripped like a leaky faucet, steady and slow until the flood came. It started with a phone call. I was in the laundry room floating towels when Aunt Clara's name flashed across my screen. We hadn't spoken in almost 18 months, so I hesitated before picking up. I answered with a cautious, "Hey, Clara." Her voice was low, tentative. "Hi, sweetheart. I wasn't sure if I should call, but I figured you deserved to know." "Know what?" "Evelyn's plotting against you," she warned, her tone heavy with guilt. She paused. "Your mom's been planning something for Felix. They've got Ringwa venue on hold out in Bend 3 weeks from now. It's a wedding, Nora." "A wedding?" I said slowly. "Felix is not engaged." "I know. That's what made it so odd." Evelyn said it was just in case, but she was already talking menus and signature cocktails. I could hear the shame in Clara's voice, the way her words grew quieter as they came. She said, "Your wedding didn't really count because it didn't come with a legacy." "She's rewriting our family," I gasped, the betrayal sinking in. Legacy. That word so polished, so cold, landed in my gut like a stone. I didn't respond. I couldn't. When the call ended, I stayed in the laundry room, surrounded by towels and silence. A memory crept in from 3 years ago. A brunch at Evelyn's house. Back then it was just me, her, Felix, and a few cousins. Evelyn had laughed over mimosas and said, "Well, you know, Felix, the last real heir to the family name, will be lucky if he marries, right?" I had laughed along with them. I thought it was harmless, just an old-fashioned jab. But now it felt like a blueprint. I remembered how Evelyn leaned across the table and asked if I'd be keeping my last name after I married. "I mean," she'd said, pouring more juice, "Julian seems nice, but it's different when it's a woman marrying in. Doesn't carry the same weight." And then she turned to Felix with a warm smile and said, "When you get married, baby, we'll really have something to celebrate." "You diminish me," I whispered, her words now a bitter truth. I had shrugged it off back then, but now the context burned. Later that evening, I pulled a small fireproof holder from my desk drawer. Inside was the deed to our home, the one Julian and I fought tooth and nail to close on 6 years ago. Back then, our credit was stretched thin. I'd asked Evelyn to co-sign, just until we got approved. Her response: "I love you, Nora, but I can't tie my name to something that might not last. I just worry you're rushing into things." We scraped together what we could and closed the deal on our own. No co-signature, no help. Now I had proof. I held it in my hands. And yet, that evening, Julian came home from the office. I was at the dining table, papers spread around me like battlefield maps. He set his briefcase down and took in the scene. "What's going on?" he asked. I handed him my phone, a screenshot from Maura again. This one was from Evelyn's group chat, dated just last week. She'd written, "So proud of Felix. Finally, the event we've all been waiting for." Nora's was just a placeholder. "They're erasing your life," he said, his voice shaking with rage. Julian didn't yell. He didn't throw anything. He just read it, his jaw tightening more with every word. Then he put the phone down and looked at me. "They don't see you," he said quietly. "They'd see an obstacle. You stole the spotlight they wanted Felix to stand in." I stared at him, feeling something shift deep inside. Not sadness, not even rage. Resolve. I opened a new folder on my laptop, started dragging in every email, RSVP receipt, screenshots, digital wedding invites, everything. I uploaded photos of the venue, the flowers, the signed check from our florist. Then I pulled out the printed deed, highlighted my name, printed it again. I wasn't sure what I was building yet, but it was going to be solid. Later that week, Evelyn hosted a virtual family meeting, the kind of Zoom call she insisted on to maintain connection even though she never once called me after the wedding. I logged in anonymously. No video, no mic, just a black square with the initials N. They laughed and gushed over Felix's upcoming moment. Lila sat beside him in a cream-colored dress, sipping champagne like it was already her rehearsal dinner. Evelyn was practically glowing, her voice syrupy and staged. "This is what we've waited for," she said, beaming. "The real celebration, the one that continues the legacy." "You're a fraud," I thought, her words fueling my determination. I leaned back in my chair, still invisible, and smiled. "Then let's see how real you want it to be." It wasn't just about Felix. It was about erasing me. That thought stayed with me as I stood in the kitchen, reheating leftover wedding cake. Not the fancy multi-tiered part, just a square of chocolate I'd saved out of habit. I wasn't hungry. I just needed something that still felt real. I hadn't let myself replay the whole reception in my mind before, but once it started, the memory ran itself like a loop. We were inside the reception tent. Warm light strung from the ceiling, music low and easy in the background. It had been time for the tribute video. Julie and I had spent weeks compiling it, photos of us as kids, our first apartment, silly clips with his nephews, even that random selfie I took outside the courthouse the day I got my promotion. I was standing near the head table, wine glass in hand, when the MC announced, "And now a little surprise for the newlyweds." I was nervous but proud. That video was our love story. Then came the pause, the fidgeting with the laptop, the soft clearing of a throat. Sorry folks, looks like the USB won't read." Julian stood up to check, but Lila beat him there. "We'll just skip it," she chirped. "No one cares about her story," she whispered to Felix, her voice venomous. "Everyone's already seen enough pictures, right?" People laughed politely. Music resumed. My stomach turned. At the time I thought it was bad luck. One of those little wedding day glitches everyone warned me about, like a boutonniere falling off, or a mispronounced name. Nothing worth making a fuss over. But now I'm not so sure it was luck at all, especially not after what happened next. Near the end of the reception, Evelyn's best friend, Gwyn, stood up with a champagne flute. Everyone tapped their glasses. She raised hers like she'd done this 100 times. "Tonight, "We celebrate love," she said, voice smooth. "And we thank everyone here who supported family legacies like Felix's. We believe in building lasting homes, in continuing the names we're proud to carry." "You're nothing to us," her words implied, a public snub. That was it. Not one mention of me or Julian, not a single acknowledgement that it was my wedding, my day. My name wasn't even whispered. I caught the glance between Julian's parents. His mom shifted uncomfortably, and his dad looked down into his glass. Julian just reached for my hand. He squeezed it gently, but his grip didn't let go. The next day, I tossed the USB into a drawer and forgot about it, or tried to. Weeks later, Julian pulled it out again. We were cleaning up, reorganizing stuff from the wedding. He plugged it into his laptop and it worked perfectly. There was the video, every frame intact, the music timed, the transitions smooth, my voice on the recording, narrating the story of how we met. Evelyn even appeared in some of the early clips, smiling beside me at my graduation, hugging me after my bar exam results came in. I sat down slowly as it played. My throat tightened. I didn't cry. I didn't blink. "She didn't want to see that version of me," I whispered. "The one she used to be proud of. She sabotaged us," Julian said, his voice low with realization. Julian was quiet, but I could tell by the tension in his shoulders, the way he shut the laptop after, that he believed what I hadn't dared to say aloud. "I think Lila swapped it out. It's the kind of thing she'd brush off as just a tech hiccup. The kind of thing you can't prove, but you feel in your bones." I spent the next morning going over the seating chart I had meticulously created months earlier. Evelyn had been listed at the center of the family table, right next to Julian's parents. No special meal request, no mobility issue. Yet she chose a table near the back beside Felix and some work friends. Her chair was empty most of the night. Later, one of my cousins admitted, half-drunk on post-reunion texts, that Evelyn and Felix had stepped out during the vows to take a call, something about a rebranding pitch for Felix's new consultancy firm. "I didn't want to lose momentum," she'd said. "Your day meant nothing to them," the cousin texted, her words a brutal truth. "They figured you'd understand." I nodded. I always did. That night I started scrawling through my phone. I selected photo after photo of centerpieces, of smiling guests, of the cake we never got to cut together. One by one, I hit delete. But then I stopped. There was a photo Julian's sister had taken. It showed me mid-laugh with Julian's mom and dad helping me into my dress. His dad was holding the train awkwardly. His mom had one hand on my shoulder, adjusting a pin in my hair. I was smiling, unaware. I didn't delete that one. I whispered, maybe out loud, maybe just in my head, maybe they were my real family that day. It was a Monday afternoon when I heard the knock. Not the hesitant kind that asks for permission, no. This one was full-bodied, like someone arriving somewhere they felt entitled to be. I opened the door, expecting a neighbor. Instead, there stood my mother, Evelyn. 2 hard-shell suitcases behind her, a tote bag over one arm. She wore a soft, curated smile, the kind you see in real estate agents mid-pitch. "Hi, sweetheart," she said, stepping forward like the welcome mat had been rolled out for her. "I thought I'd spend a little time here. Things are tight at Felix's." "You can't just barge in," I said, my voice firm with defiance. I blinked. Not anger, not shock, just a hollow, sinking numbness that began somewhere in my spine and crawled its way into my jaw. She was already wheeling her luggage in before I could say anything. I didn't stop her. I didn't offer tea, but I also didn't slam the door. By the time Julian returned from the grocery store, she was sitting at the kitchen table like it was hers. "I brewed chamomile," she told him, lifting the mug. "Still your favorite, right?" "You're not welcome here," he said, his tone icy with contempt. He gave her a look that wasn't rude, but certainly wasn't warm. Then he looked at me. I gave him the smallest shake of my head. Later that evening, she wandered into the living room, holding a framed photo of Julian and me. "I knew this place had potential," she said, smiling to herself. "I remember when I helped you get the loan. Such a smart decision." I stared at her, stunned. My throat tightened because no, she hadn't helped. Not even a little. 6 years ago, I was scrambling to lock in the property, desperate for a co-signer after a freelance client delayed payment and my credit union got cold feet. I called her. I asked her plainly. She told me, "I can't attach my name to something that might not last. It's not personal. It's about stability." I had printed that loan decision letter and kept it buried in my filing cabinet. Now? Her voice echoed like it came from a parallel reality. "You didn't help," I said finally, quiet but firm. "You refuse to." "You're lying to everyone," I accused, my voice trembling with anger. She waved it off. "Oh, you know how banks twist things. I was part of that journey. I told everyone you were building something special." I didn't know who everyone was, but I didn't have to wait long to find out. The next afternoon, Aunt Sylvia rang the bell. She came by with a manila envelope of old tax papers, her expression tight. She stepped inside, greeted Evelyn, and followed me to the back hallway with a whispered, "We need to talk." When we were alone, she passed me the envelope. "You should see this," she said. "I thought you already knew." But then I saw her car in the driveway. Inside the folder were printed emails, email chains between Evelyn and what looked like a lender. Subject line, "Loan Extension Discussion. Felix Property." There it was in Evelyn's words. "We are leveraging my daughter's Portland home for documentation purposes. It's essentially my asset. I helped her acquire it. Happy to clarify. She's stealing your home," Sylvia said, her voice heavy with sorrow. My fingers curled against the edges of the page. "She used my name to help Felix," I whispered. Sylvia nodded, lips pressed tight. "They've been saying it's hers. I think she's done it before." That night, Evelyn hummed as she rinsed dishes like it was just another evening in a home she'd always owned. Stood in the archway, watching her in silence. This wasn't just a house. This was my every late-night freelancing, every missed party, every anxiety attack over tax season. This home was mine, earned, fought for, maintained by sheer will when others would have walked away. Evelyn didn't raise me. She crafted a version of me that fit her stories and now apparently her loan documents. Julian came home. He didn't ask. He saw it in my eyes. He set the groceries down, walked straight over, and wrapped his arms around me. "You don't have to let this continue," he murmured into my hair. "Not again. She's no mother to you," he said, his voice fierce with loyalty. I nodded into his chest, the lump in my throat pressing upward. Later, I found her in the guest room, rearranging throw pillows. She picked up a small square napkin from the shelf. "You still do this silly star fold?" she asked, laughing lightly. "I remember when you used to decorate every Thanksgiving table with these." I took it from her hand gently. "No," I said. "That's the last one. I stopped making them when I stopped making space for people who never came." "You never cared about me," I said, my voice steady with truth. She gave a forced chuckle, turning back to the suitcase she had half unzipped on the bed. I didn't laugh with her, because something inside me was no longer folding. It was unfolding, and just when I almost let her stay, she handed me a list. By the next morning, I had almost convinced myself it might not be so bad. Maybe we could tolerate each other for a few weeks. Then I walked into the kitchen and saw the list. It was a single sheet of paper folded cleanly in half, sitting dead center on the kitchen island like it belonged there. I unfolded it. Grocery refills. "Drive me to Dr. Harper. Laundry pickup. Call the HOA about the fence." My eyes skimmed down to the bottom line. "And please don't use your office while I rest. It clicks too loud." There was no smiley face, no joke, just a typed-up list, a command chain. She had placed it there like she was running the house. I didn't say a word. She walked in behind me, stirring her tea, completely at ease. "Oh, I figured we'd split things while I'm here. You've always been organized." "You think you own me?" I snapped, my voice sharp with defiance. I didn't respond. I didn't nod. But she took my silence like an unspoken yes. That's how she always operated, interpreting my quiet as consent, my hesitation as agreement. Later that afternoon, I sat cross-legged on the living room rug, organizing old financial paperwork for my accountant. I opened a black folder from the year I bought the house. I found it, a copy of my initial mortgage rejection due to lack of a cosign. Attached to it was a notarized letter, Evelyn's. It was a formal, coldly worded declaration that she did not wish to attach her assets to speculative property. Her words, in black ink. And now here she was, lounging in that same speculative home, telling neighbors she helped me buy it. That night, after dinner, I laid the letter on the kitchen counter. Evelyn barely glanced at it. "That was then," she said, plucking an orange from the fruit bowl. "You turned out fine. Why are we digging up the past?" I didn't flinch. "You told the bank this place wasn't worth backing. Now you're calling it yours?" "You're a liar," I accused, my voice cutting through her facade. She leaned on the counter like we were discussing paint colors. "Because no one challenges what I say," she replied, biting into the orange. "Until now." Julian, who had been stacking dishes behind me, stopped moving. "If he's done," he whispered, his voice a quiet vow of support. The next morning, things got worse. Over breakfast, Evelyn cleared her throat. "I'd been meaning to ask, could you take over full-time care for Grandma? With everything going on, it'd look better if it came from you, and you work from home anyway." I blinked slowly. "She's in Bend." "Yes, but you don't have kids, and she trusts you." I didn't even laugh. I just looked at her and said, "You didn't come to my wedding. You erased me from yours, and now you want me to clean up what's left of your mess. You're shameless," I spat, my voice trembling with righteous anger. She made a show of exhaling through her nose. "You always twist things, Nora." "No, I finally started untangling them." She stood up and left the room. No apology, no retreat, just that same sense of control she always cloaked herself in like armor. I walked out onto the porch, phone shaking in my hand. I stared at the walls of the home I'd built, from exhaustion and stubbornness and a need to prove I didn't need saving. For a moment, I almost let myself believe it'd be easier to walk away. But then I remembered the napkin, the bouquet, the video that never played, the seat that stayed empty. The hurt didn't rage anymore. It hardened. Not into bitterness, but resolve. I went inside. Julian was on the couch, laptop open, headphones in. I sat at my desk and opened a blank Word doc. I started typing "to whom it may concern" regarding false ownership claims. But before I hit save, I stopped. There was no point writing to people who already knew how she operated and pretended they didn't. I didn't need to explain. I needed to show. So I reached for my phone, opened the voice recorder app, and pressed record. I slipped the phone face down on the table and walked into the kitchen like nothing happened. From the living room, I could hear Evelyn's voice again. Not the one she used with neighbors or church people. The one that only came out when she forgot others could hear. You know, Nora was just a bump in our family story. Evelyn laughed, voice faint but sharp. "Felix is the legacy," Lila chimed in. "She was a mistake we tried to raise right. It didn't take." "You're vile," I whispered, their words fueling my resolve. There was laughter, tight, smug, mean. Felix said nothing in the clip, but his silence wasn't defense, it was complicity. That voicemail sent months ago by Aunt Sylvia had been sitting buried in my inbox, unread. She'd labeled it, "in case you ever stop giving them the benefit of the doubt." I had. And now, with the audio freshly burned into my ears, I listened again. Then once more. I didn't cry, didn't speak. I just sat on the couch with my knees to my chest, phone pressed to my palm like a blade. My thoughts weren't swirling, they were settling, sharpening. It was a Tuesday morning. Eveline had gone out to meet a friend for early service and bagels, as she'd put it. Julian returned from his run, saw me still in the same spot I'd been 2 hours earlier. I handed him the phone. He listened without asking. When it ended, he lowered the phone and said, "Do you want to send it?" I shook my head. "No," I said softly. "I want them to hear it together, without a warning, without control." "Let's end their lies," he said, his voice fierce with solidarity. He didn't respond. He didn't need to. We both understood the next step wasn't about rage. It was about reclaiming the story. I opened my laptop and started building folders. Wedding lies, property fraud, the tape. Each folder got screenshots, documents, timelines, emails, deeds. I wasn't writing a tell-all. I was archiving a truth they couldn't distort. And I wasn't doing it for them. I was doing it so I'd never forget how long I'd bent backward for people who never thought I mattered. 5 days later, Aunt Ruth hosted the monthly family potluck. I hadn't attended one in years, but this time I said yes. I didn't dress up. No makeup, no smiles, just jeans, a black sweater, and the confidence of someone with nothing left to prove. When I walked in, the kitchen was warm, with baked lasagna and passive-aggressive compliments. Evelyn stood by the counter, handing out cookies she hadn't baked. "It's just so nice to be with people who still value togetherness," she said loudly. "You're a hypocrite," I thought, her words a hollow performance. I saw Felix in the corner talking about his consulting venture. Lila was already tipsy from Aunt Ruth's red sangria, whispering to someone about a neighbor's divorce. I walked past the buffet table, set my purse on the chair across from Evelyn, and placed my phone in the center of the dining table. Julian, already seated beside me, met my eyes and nodded once. I tapped play. The room froze at the sound of Evelyn's voice, Felix's chuckle, Lila's venom. "You betrayed her," a cousin gasped, the truth shattering their facade. By the time the audio faded, no one was chewing or blinking. Evelyn's mouth parted, but nothing came out. Her skin flushed a color I'd never seen on her. She started to reach for the phone like it might rewrite the moment. "This isn't how we handle things in this family," she hissed. "You don't get to decide anymore," I retorted, my voice unwavering. I stood slowly, eyes level. "You're right. That's why I'm not doing it your way anymore." No one clapped. No one spoke. But several cousins stood and walked out. Aunt Ruth wiped her eyes and started cleaning early, muttering maybe we all needed to hear it. I didn't ask for an apology. I didn't look back. I walked out the front door with Julian beside me, and the only sound behind me was the clatter of silverware that finally meant something. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt clean. For the first time, the silence wasn't swallowing me. It was making space for what came next. When I opened Facebook that morning, I wasn't looking for a fight, but there it was. Evelyn's post centered on my screen like a slap in digital ink. 35 years ago, I began building a home for our family legacy. Today, I'm proud to still be guiding that legacy from the very home that saw our children grow. My house, my home. Cropped to perfection in the attached photo with just enough siding to suggest warmth, but not a trace of me. I scrolled through the comments. "Beautiful Evelyn. You've always had such grace. What a blessing to your family." One read, "Legacy. That's what real mothers leave behind." She'd tagged it all with family heritage built with love matriarch, like some nostalgic real estate ad for a life she never actually lived in. "You're stealing my life," I muttered, her post a public lie. And they believed her, at first. The very next day, the HOA held its quarterly meeting at the community clubhouse. I'd marked it on my calendar weeks ago, but now it felt like fate had reserved that date just for me. When I arrived, Evelyn was already there, chatting with the board president, making polite noises about neighborhood upkeep. She caught my eye and smiled with a familiarity I no longer recognized. The meeting began. Minutes were read, updates shared, then came the member comments. I raised my hand. "I'd like to clarify something," I said, rising to my feet, steady. "There seems to be confusion about ownership of 3812 Cedar Lane. I placed a copy of the deed on the community table. This house was purchased under my name, with my finances, my credit, my career. Evelyn Carter is not listed as owner, co-owner, or guarantor on any legal document." I paused. No one interrupted. "For anyone confused, here are the mortgage approvals, the tax records, and the denial letter I received when I asked her to co-sign 6 years ago." "She lied to us all," a neighbor whispered, the room buzzing with shock. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to, because the room had gone completely still. Later that night, I uploaded a simple post to the neighborhood forum with 3 side-by-side images: Evelyn's post, my property documents, and the wedding tribute video. Yes, the one she'd sabotaged with the broken USB. The response was immediate. "Wow," someone wrote. "We always wondered why you were the only one out there weeding the flower beds." Another. "That video broke me. How could they treat you that way? Thank you for showing us." "You're a hero," a neighbor messaged, their support a balm to my wounds. By noon the next day, the thread had over 85 comments. People shared their own stories of mothers who took credit, sisters who erased, families that dressed up betrayal as tradition. What stunned me wasn't just the outrage. It was the kind that doesn't come from gossip but from lived truth. Lila predictably tried to do damage control. Under a shared thread, she commented, "Sad when people weaponize family for pity points. Real class shows in what you keep private." "You're complicit," I thought, her words a desperate defense. But then Evelyn's old friend replied underneath, "You were the one who told me not to attend Nora's wedding. Don't push it." I still have the message. "You're exposed," the friend added, her betrayal shattering Lila's facade. And just like that, the screen cracked open. Screenshots followed. Private messages leaked. Old allies began pulling away. One church acquaintance even commented, "I donated to Felix's business because Evelyn said the house was collateral. I'd like a word with someone about that." In the span of 48 hours, her decades-long image of dignity and self-sacrifice was collapsing under the weight of her own manipulation. I didn't cheer, didn't say, "Told you so." Instead, I received a message from someone I barely remembered. A woman who used to teach Sunday school when I was 8. "I didn't know," she wrote, "but I should have seen it. The way you carried yourself after that wedding, that was real grace." "I'm sorry." "You're seen now," she added, her words a gift of validation. And in that moment, something inside me softened, not toward Evelyn but toward myself. Because maybe, just maybe, I didn't have to fight to be seen anymore. Maybe the truth had already done the work for me. The week drifted by. I stayed busy answering neighbor messages, replying to emails from the HOA board, even baking a blueberry loaf for Julian's co-workers like nothing seismic had just split through my family. But then on a Tuesday evening, as I was folding laundry in the living room, I heard it, a knock at something deeper, like a weight dropped from memory. When I answered the door, Evelyn stood there. She had no suitcase this time. No bags, just her. Shoulders tense beneath a gray coat, hands clasped like she wasn't sure what they were supposed to be doing. Her voice was soft, cracked. "I don't know what to say." I didn't move from the threshold. I didn't smile. "You already did," I said. "Every time you said nothing." "You broke me," I added, my voice steady with pain. She looked away, blinking too fast, but no tears came. Not from her, and not from me. We stood there a moment longer, breathing in a silence that said more than apologies ever could. She asked if we could talk. Just us. No cameras, no posts. I stepped back inside, left the door cracked just wide enough for her words to slip through. I didn't mean to hurt you. Things just got complicated. You chose Felix over me, I said, my voice cutting through her excuse. I shook my head gently. This isn't about hurt anymore, Evelyn. It's about clarity. I've moved past needing an explanation. She frowned like she didn't understand, like the math wasn't mathing in her mind. I never thought you'd turn cold. I met her eyes. I'm not cold. I'm clear. And I closed the door. Not slammed, just closed. The kind of close that doesn't echo, the kind that ends things. Later that night, Julian sat beside me on the couch. We were quiet for a long time, watching the light rain tap against the windows. He glanced over. Do you feel better? I thought for a while, searched for a word that wasn't false. Not better, I finally said. Just done. He nodded, pulled me closer with one arm, his other hand still holding the remote he hadn't touched in 25 minutes. That's what healing sounds like, he said. You're free now, he added, his voice warm with pride, and we just sat there. No talking, no television, just breath and knowing. Weeks passed. One Monday morning, I hosted brunch for Julian's family. His parents brought croissants. His sister brought her 2 kids, one of whom darted straight into my kitchen while I was setting the table. The little girl, maybe 8, stopped beside me and tilted her head. That's pretty. Who taught you that? She was staring at the napkin I'd just folded, star-shaped, delicate, creased with care. An echo, I hesitated. No one who stayed, I said, gently pressing the napkin beside her plate. But someone who taught me what leaving looks like. You're teaching me strength, she said, her innocent smile a gift. She didn't understand. She didn't need to. She just smiled and ran off to find apple juice. That evening I sat with my journal, unsure how to end something that had already ended so many times before. So instead, I wrote the truth. My mother didn't just skip my wedding. She skipped showing up for the woman I became. I paused, then added, but I no longer measure love by who claps the loudest or who posts the most. I measure it by who shows up when no one's watching. That was the thing about building a life. You start thinking it's about who shows up for the milestones, birthdays, vows, housewarmings, but really, it's about who brings in your trash bin when you forget. Who checks the pilot light when your heater sputters? Who folds beside you, not to criticize, but just to be near? I closed the journal and whispered out loud, sometimes the family you build is the one you finally get to choose. I choose myself, I vowed, my voice a quiet triumph, and I meant it. Have you ever closed a door? Not out of hate, but because you finally loved yourself enough. Sometimes the deepest wounds come not from strangers, but from the silence of those we once called home. When love is measured by loyalty to a legacy instead of the person in front of you, someone always ends up erased. Have you ever been written out of your own story just to protect someone else's image? If this story moved you, share your thoughts below. And don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories like this, because healing from family drama takes more than time. It takes truth.